Hi everyone, this is Brett from Promazzo. We're here with Tracey Massey, from the President of the Americas from Mars Wrigley Confectionery. And she's here serving on the panel of the Dynamic Women in Business Conference at Harvard today. And thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
Well, just to jump into things, it would be great to hear kind of your first job out of school and kind of how that worked, and how you chose it, and because it's really interesting in terms of your career arc going forward.
Yeah, sure. So I did chemical engineering degree, and I picked chemical engineering because I was good at math and I was good at physics, and quite honestly because it was a very high-paying profession. So I chose my degree based on how I could make some money. I was pretty poor when I was growing up, so I wanted to get a good job and make some good money. I did engineering in college, realised I didn't really want to be an engineer, and so I joined Mars back in the UK as a manufacturing graduate trainee. So I went into manufacturing because I could use my engineering, but spend more of my time with people, so manufacturing is more about people. So that's how I did that. Mars was a very well-known company in the UK and was very well known for its development program. So, you know, the best thing to do if you're looking find a company that develops people really well, and you can't really go wrong. So that's why I chose Mars, because of their reputation for great people development. And I chose manufacturing so I could use my engineering, but work more with people. So that's where I started. I've had a pretty unconventional career path. Jumped around a lot. When I first started, I wanted to run a factory. That was my career goal, to be able to run a factory. I never ever dreamed I would be a CEO.
That's pretty amazing. And in terms of that, you mentioned about the leadership development programs. We've seen a lot of that kind of go away in a lot of corporate structures. You think that though was critical in terms of allowing you to kind of experience different opportunities, kind of get your feet on the ground and everything like that?
Yeah, for sure, because it was an 18-month program. The programs we run now are 3 years, but for me it was 18 months, 3 jobs of 6 months each, and a very targeted development program, so that you either made it or you didn't. So it was a bit up and out, but they just gave you such great experiences that you could really build your career and understand what the different parts did. So I was an industrial engineer. Then I was a shift manager, and I got my first experience of managing people. And then I went into sales, and it enabled me then at the end of the program to have a better idea of the company, better idea of the jobs, and then hopefully choose the right thing to do. Because when you join a new company, you don't always know what you're going to do. You learn a lot in school, but real life isn't always the same. So it was a really good opportunity to try different things and get to know the company.
You hail from the UK, and so what have you seen have been the differences from the British education system and where you've come up from that and through that, compared to now you work in America, in New York, or in New Jersey, sorry, and seeing kind of how the job applicants, how are they different, or what maybe is kind of a stark difference between those two kind of cultures?
Yeah, the biggest difference is you start younger in the UK, and you specialise earlier. So less people in the UK will have an MBA. Most people, so I don't have an MBA. Most people will just do undergrad and go into work. And in that undergrad you specialise. So school goes through 16. Most people leave at 16. And then you can do A levels from 16 to 18, which is where you start to specialise. So it's a general career general education through 16. 16 to 18 you pick your subjects. So for me that was physics, chemistry, math. And then when you go to undergrad you're specialising. So I did chemical engineering for 3 years. With a year in the middle where they call it a sandwich course, where you can go work and then come back and take your final year. That's when I decided in that year working that I didn't want to be an engineer. So it was quite useful from that point of view, because I already knew before I got my first proper job, rather than going into it and then finding out I didn't really like it and then having to stay for a bit. So I think that's the biggest difference. Certainly my children are all American, they've all gone through the American system. And when they go to undergrad, they're still doing a range of subjects, like a bit of English, a bit of math, as well as their specialty. So I think that's the biggest difference. But I actually think you can actually do a lot when you come out at 22, 23. And so my push would be, hey, give the undergrads a bit more of a chance, because when you're that young, you're so happy to learn and absorb everything. I don't think companies push undergrads hard enough. I think they can do a lot more than people give them credit for.
Well, I guess one of the things we talk about too in Promazzo is a lot about realizing your potential. And so in terms of your career arc, what do you think have been some, key metrics or key times where you've had to kind of stand up and to be able to realize that potential, or how have you thought about that as you kind of started out?
Yeah, like I said, my career is a bit unconventional, so I sort of moved around doing things that I liked and I was good at, versus having a really structured career path. So actually, when I finished my my training scheme, I went into finance. So Mars is what I love about the company. I've been with Mars for 28 years, and one of the reasons I have is because they've given me so many different opportunities. I've never felt the need to move. I could stay in one company but do lots of different things. So my first business I worked in was a drinks business in the UK, and it was a B2B business. So I moved into finance. I knew nothing about finance, had no clue, never taken one accounting class in my life. But Mars taught me finance. So I moved into finance. They literally taught me how to do it, and then I moved around in finance, did all of the jobs, became the controller of the European drinks and electronics business. And then from at that point, I was really looking for a change, and I managed to get a job in the pet care division in the US. So I moved over to the US in Los Angeles and worked for a pet care business in finance. I did that for a couple of years, and then I got the chance to hit my dream, and I went and ran a pet care factory, dry pet food factory in South Carolina. So, I would say again, it's a company that I really didn't have that much experience. No other company would have allowed me to go run a factory because I really had a year's experience in manufacturing and then 10 years in finance. But what Mars does is it takes risks on people. So our philosophy is if you're learning agile, we can pretty much teach you everything else. It's easier to move around earlier in your career, so my advice would be move around earlier. I moved around earlier in my career. Once you get to a certain level, then obviously you need a lot more experience. But I went and ran a factory, and then I came back into finance. I moved to New Jersey and was the controller for North America for all of our businesses. From there, I became CFO of the chocolate business, US chocolate business. I did that for about 3 years, and then I became the CFO of the global business, and that was hard because people will say, well, you don't know emerging markets. How can you run a global business when you don't know emerging markets? My experience was UK and US, but again, I would say you can learn anything, right? So know what you don't know and go learn. So I traveled to a lot of different countries, from Iran to Russia to China to obviously all of Europe, Latin America. Learned about those businesses, and I think that job was probably the one that got me ready to do this one. I didn't realise it at the time because my goal was to continue being a CFO. I didn't want to be a CEO, had no interest at all. I liked being a number two because as a CFO you can make a lot of the decisions and you can influence behind the scenes. You don't have to do as much of the what I would call the show and the politics. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'll just be the one really making the decisions. And then about 4 years ago now, my boss, who was the CEO, asked me to go and run the North American chocolate business. And I said no 3 times before he finally convinced me to do it.
What was the final one that got you to do it?
He just said, I really need you to do it. The business was struggling, and it needed to be turned around, and they needed somebody that understood it. And I'd been the CFO of that business 5 years previously, so I understood the business really well. He knew me better than I knew myself. He was confident that I could do it. And for the 3rd time, he said, look, the business is in trouble. We really need you to go do it. And I'm very loyal to my company. They've been great to me. So I decided to take the risk. Based on his confidence of me, I would say more than anything else, because I didn't have that confidence myself. But I would say 2 weeks in, I was like, yeah, I can do this. So, I think sometimes you have to listen to other people and let them, if a good manager will know what you can do. Nobody's going to push you to something you can't do. That's not in their interest at all. So if they're pushing you to do something, it's probably because they think you can do it, and you should give it a try. So that was how I got my CEO job, not by a structured career path, but I would say the global CFO job was probably the one that best prepared me for it, because I spent time with general managers in the various countries, learning from them, understanding what they did, and then I found when I moved into that job myself, I had all this experience to draw on because I'd spent time with all of these great people and I'd seen them operate. I'd seen what worked, what didn't work from the sidelines, and then I was able to put it into practice, but I wouldn't have thought that myself. So I would say, sometimes you have to push yourself into an uncomfortable position. Sometimes people are going to push you, and just take that push and go with it.
And speaking of that, you mentioned that when you first started out, your goal was to run a factory.
Yes.
So how did you reset your expectations after you kind of achieved that first kind of big life goal? How do you kind of, not just be satisfied with that, but keep pushing yourself to achieve more?
Yeah, I think different people are different. For me, the way I've sort of moved through my career is I've done that job and then looked at the next one. To start with, you say, well, I don't know if I could ever do that. Then after a little while, you think, hey, I could do that, and then move to the next one. So I think once I'd run the factory, it was okay. Well, what next? And then you just see what's possible. The closer you get to it, the more skills you build, the more you then realise I could do that. I think it's quite arrogant at 22 to say, hey, I'm going to run a company. Because you know what, it's quite difficult and it takes a lot of experience. It's good to have that vision and that's where you want to go, but appreciate that it's complicated and it's difficult, and then do the work, do the groundwork, get the experience to make yourself good at it. Because if you're a CEO and you're not good, thousands of people suffer. So what's most important is that you get the skills that you need to get there. And then for me, it was always, I sort of can see that next one once I'm in the one below. I never felt I could really get there, but you can. And hard work, learning agility, those are the keys.
And then I guess from that, I noticed from your panel, one thing you said there was actually being kind of present to go to some of these events.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess from that perspective is, how did you get yourself ready to, be on a panel, or how did you start that kind of progression to do that? Do you think it's really important to maybe consider doing that even earlier in your career, or do you think it's a right time once you're kind of towards that senior management role?
I mean, the more you can do it, the earlier you can do it, I would say do it, because if you want to be a CEO, you have to be able to talk. You have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to do things like that, because everybody wants the CEO on the panel, right? That's the reality. So it's harder when you're not the CEO, because not as many people want to talk to you. But I would say if you can do it, do it. However you can get that experience. As a CFO, I presented a lot in terms of in front of the board, in front of people, but I wasn't the one standing up on stage trying to rally 6,000 associates. And that was probably the thing that made me most nervous about taking the CEO job, and why I was sort of happier staying behind the scenes, because I wasn't sure I could do that. You watch people that do it really well, and you're like, well, if I can't do it like that, I really don't want to do it. Because I'm sure you've seen good people and bad people, and you're like, hey, I don't want to be the person that's shaky, I want to be the person that's really good. So what I did when I got the job was put in a very, very, very clear development plan in place. I went and got training in terms of how to communicate, how to present, how to be on live TV. So there are training courses you can go on where they put you through your paces, and they strip you down to build you up. So it's a
little rough in the beginning.
Very rough in the beginning. So you start and they're like, you're terrible. Here's everything you're doing wrong. Which can be quite demoralising unless you're committed to get better. But by the end of the 2 days, I was so much better. And then it's practice. So the first TV interview I ever gave was Fox. Less people watch it than CNBC. So my corporate affairs guys are really, really good, and they will start you off with smaller things and then build you up to the bigger things until when they know you're ready. Because the last thing you want to do is mess it up. So start with the small. As you get more confident, then move to a bigger one, and live TV on CNBC is pretty nerve-wracking. So I wouldn't say make that your first one, but once you realise you can do it, and then for me, I came back into the business, and the pride of my associates, we call employees associates, the pride of those people from having seen somebody on TV talk about the amazing place we work in was so good. It encourages you to do it again. And I think there's different things. So something like that drives pride in your business. Something like this just enables you to give back. I wish when I was 22, I'd had the opportunity somebody to tell me, what, you couldn't do it. And there's no one path. You can really do it anyway. So you don't have to have, I sometimes think you have to have the structured path. You don't. You can pretty much do whatever and get there as long as you get key experiences. Mm-hmm. I wish at 22 I'd have known that. Maybe I'd
just believed in yourself a little bit more.
I'd have believed in myself a little bit more. Yeah. I don't not believe in myself, but certainly at 22 I didn't. I just wanted a job. I wanted to make some money.
I guess kind of on a closing bit of questions here, can you maybe describe some of the culture aspects of Mars and how it really is kind of an interesting environment for millennials and coming into this environment nowadays with so much technology changing things and like that you've seen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the thing about Mars that differentiates it is it's a private company. So the benefit when you work in it is that you don't have the quarterly shareholder meetings. So for somebody like me, I can spend more of my time on strategy, on business, on people, than my counterparts who have to go to the street and talk to the analysts and spend a lot of time preparing for that. Same with our CFOs, you get to spend much more time on strategy. And the big thing is it enables the company to take a long-term view, because they're not here for the next quarter or the next year, we're here for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So the decisions we make are more long-term in nature, and it just enables you to do business in a different way, which is pretty good working in the company, because you know you're there for the long term and they're going to make those sorts of decisions. So whether it be things like investing money in cocoa sustainability, all of our associates go out and work in their local communities. We spend a lot of time. We believe that we get a lot out of our local communities, and we need to give a lot back. And so we do a lot of that type of thing. And honestly, I would say millennials like that. They like a company that's doing not just business, but good business, and a company that does the right things. And it's previously we hadn't talked about it very much because we were private. Now we're trying to talk about it a lot more. We've always done it, we've just not talked about it. And so the people that work for us are proud to work for this type of company because of all the good things that we do. And now we're talking about it, more people know, and then it's easier to also attract talent. Right? So we spend a lot of time on digitalization and how you keep up with the trends. We've also got a lot of factories. So I have 18 factories. So we need good engineers, we need good computer sciences makers, we need good marketers, we need good everything, because it really is, as a company, and honestly why my career has, I think, been so good, is when you work for a big company like Mars that has different businesses, you can get different business experiences by staying in the same company, and staying in a company that is close to your values. So if you're choosing a job, my biggest advice to you would be pick a company whose values match your own, because you're a long time at work. And the values of Mars really do resonate with our associates. Whether it's mutuality because we treat people fairly, responsibility, which means hey, do what you do. Efficiency is important for everybody to make money. But the different one for us is freedom, because freedom is what enables us to take a long-term view. If you make profit enables you to go for the long term. And then quality is our first principle. When you make products like we make, M&Ms, they've got to taste good every single time you have them. They've got to taste the same every single time you have them.
So not melt too much in your hand.
Not melt in your hands, and that's not easy to do. It's actually very complicated to do, which is why nobody's really copied it over all these years. So, what I think makes this difference is that you can be an engineer, you can be a finance person, you can be a salesperson. So you can have whatever career you want. You can span different companies, but you still get to work for the same company whose values are really important, and that's why I've stayed. I've had lots of different opportunities. They've taken risks on me, and I've had a great career as a result. So it builds loyalty.
I noticed on your website, actually, right now, you have a big celebration for women in STEM.
Yes.
And oftentimes, when people are coming out of computer science, they typically think of traditional technology companies.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've seen is kind of an interesting dynamic, and you mentioned it just now, is actually the digitization of some of the companies that are more, to say, traditional, and how that maybe even affords a whole different type of opportunity because, like you said, there's so much need for engineering. And so maybe you can talk about some of the opportunities from a women's perspective and also from that STEM perspective, a combination thereof.
Yeah, from a women's perspective, we need more women in STEM. We need more women in STEM. It's important. It's important to have a balance in everything that you do, and you really want to replicate your environment. There's like 50% women in the world, so you know what? We should have 50% STEM. We should have 50% senior managers. It's balance is good, diversity is good, and inclusion is good. So that's really important. I happen to have done it. I'm an engineer, and yet now I'm a CEO. So if you want to be an engineer, you can be an engineer. If you want to be something else, you can be something else. But STEM is such a great background because it teaches you to think, it teaches you to be logical and to be rational. And when you're approaching business challenges, whatever they may be, that ability to think like that is probably one of the biggest skills that you can have. So it doesn't matter if you actually end up not being an engineer or a computer science person, but what they've taught you in terms of how to think will set you up in any job you want to do. So don't limit yourself to computer science or engineering. Really, the world is limitless. And the problems you can solve now through artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's about taking what's happening, analysing it, and looking for solutions. And those skills are pretty critical. So I would say to anybody, STEM is a great career. You can learn finance. Like I was an engineer. I'm telling you, finance versus thermodynamics, no question which one's easiest. So, you know, do the toughest degree, do the tough one, and the other stuff will come easy to you.
That sounds great. Well, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.